It's the Growing for Market podcast.
Yeah, I did like the incubator track so that I could actually get connected with the landowners and see what options there were for land access. But, there's also that other option too as well. So those are like one of the three main pillars that really kind of set the stage for me as an incubator to be able to pull off a 1/4 acre farm with 1 year of experience. Had it not been for the curriculum that was structured so nicely, and I could talk a little bit about some of the topics that we covered, had it not been for that, the connection with the land access, and then also the mentors that I was able to kind of leverage throughout this whole season, I honestly don't think I would have been able to pull this off.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm Katie Kulla, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 32 years, the only magazine devoted solely to flower and vegetable market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait till you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Start 2024 off right with Local Line. Local Line is the all-in-one sales platform for direct market farms and food hubs. Increase your sales and streamline your processes with features including e-commerce, inventory management, subscriptions, online payments, and more. Trusted by thousands of farmers across North America, Local Line is the platform you need to take your farm to the next level. Subscriptions start as low as $39 per month. Try Local Line today and receive a free premium feature for 1 year and receive 15% off Local Line's marketing services using the coupon code GROWINGFORMARKET. That coupon code is GROWING, the number 4, market, Growing for Market, all one word, for 15% off Local Line's marketing services and 1 free premium feature for a year at Local Line. If you're an experienced vegetable farmer, don't miss out on the 2024 Organic Vegetable Production Conference. In its 8th year, this conference fills that expert-level niche you're looking for. Farmer presenters share the nitty-gritty details of their production practices and also speak on a wide range of topics, from fertilizer injectors and pest management with beneficials to seed saving and labor retention. With online sessions on January 25th and 26th and in-person sessions on February 2nd and 3rd in Madison, Wisconsin, you can plug in no matter where you are. Register today at tinyurl.com/26285AX5 or just search Organic Vegetable Production Conference, University of Wisconsin, and you'll find it. I am so excited to welcome Bootstrap Farmer as a sponsor of the podcast. I've known them for a dozen years, and if anyone tells you nothing is made in the USA anymore, well, they're headquartered and warehoused in Paris, Texas. They make their own all-metal, all-inclusive greenhouse frames of steel made in the USA and fabricated in Texas, and their heavy-duty, reusable propagation and microgreens trays are Midwest-made. With a complete range of supplies, they have just about everything for propagation and growing, including heat mats, ground cover, frost blankets, silage tarps, irrigation, and trellising. Want to color code your seed starting flats? They've got heavy-duty trays that will last for years in a full range of colors. Great for keeping farm seedlings separate from retail or just for fun. And they have an experienced team of growers to support everything they sell. If you've heard of the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative providing grants for hoop houses, but have been put off by the paperwork, Bootstrap Farmer has a guide that will walk you through the application process so you can get your hoop house funded this winter. For all that and more, check out Bootstrap Farmer at bootstrapfarmer.com.
Hi, everyone. Today, I am speaking with Keshaun Joseph of Mount Liamuiga Farm in Golden, Colorado. I reached out to Keshaun after seeing his posts on Instagram documenting his first year farming. While I definitely love interviewing farmers with years and even decades of experience, I also think it's really amazing to hear from farmers who are just starting their journey. Sometimes it's all too easy for us more experienced farmers to forget the details of how we got to where we are today. I know that for my husband and me, starting our farm in 2006 was a momentous year, one we'll never forget. However, at this point, So many of the minor yet important business and farming decisions we made that year are hard to recall detail by detail. So I assume that in our audience, we have plenty of people who are hoping to start a farm someday or in that process. And I want to provide some insight into how to make that happen. How to bridge the gap between wanting to farm and actually farming can feel mysterious. So I want to make a habit of interviewing at least one brand new farmer at the end of every growing season. And today, Keshaun is the first. I'm excited to hear how his year went, all the ups and downs of that very first season. Keshaun is a first-generation Caribbean American and second-generation farmer from the island of St. Kitts. His father was a peanut farmer and cultivated sugarcane. He moved to the United States as a teenager to pursue an accounting degree and later went on to become a successful accounting professional for 10 years. At the beginning of 2022, he reached a point of burnout and made a decision to step away from his profession so that he could focus on family and his mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. During this time, he discovered his passion for growing food, honoring the land, and building community, and made the decision to pursue farming. Earlier this year, he started Mount Liamuiga Farm, an urban farm in Golden, Colorado. Keshaun, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hey, Katie, thank you so much for having me.
So before we dig into this season, let's backtrack a bit. I know that like many people, you're not a first career farmer. You did something else first, which is not uncommon. But you do have farming experience from your childhood. Can you give us sort of the backstory on your whole journey to farming?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, like you said in the introduction, my dad was a peanut farmer. He also grew some pumpkins and different things. He grew on about 2 acres in the Caribbean. And I honestly just remember being a little kid running around the farm, helping my dad doing small little things here and there, not truly understanding just exactly what he was doing, right? It was just more so fun for me. And I honestly wanted to be at home playing, video games or anything like that. Long story short, after a few years, my dad, he ended up closing down his farm in St. Kitts. And, that was kind of the end of that journey, really. Like I really got like a brief introductory period to it. I didn't really appreciate it as much as I have grown to appreciate farming now. And that's kind of like some of the reason why I wanted to actually kind of get back to it and kind of ground myself in my cultural roots and my heritage and rediscover my passion for growing food. So yeah, my dad, he went on, he worked for the sugarcane factory in St. Kitts and Nevis, and he worked his way up to become like a super railway attendant. So he managed all of the railway around the island for all of the sugarcane when they would harvest it, put it into the locomotive engines and take it to be processed and stuff. So it was always interesting. Agriculture has always been a part of our family and our story. But just like any other immigrant parents, they wanted me to move far away from farming as possible, right? They wanted me to come to America, get an education, study, make money to kind of, further myself. And essentially I did just that. My dad, he really didn't care that I wasn't really interested in pursuing agriculture because, like I said, he wanted me to like pursue something and do something better than what he was able to accomplish. So, probably at the age of 5, I think I discovered that I wanted to be an accountant.
At the age of 5?
I know. Most people want to be doctors.
I don't think I even knew that such a thing existed.
I know. So I had an uncle, his name was Uncle Victor. Yeah. And so he would come to America. He was a tax accountant. And every Christmas, when we would have our carnival in St. Kitts, he would come down from America and he would bring me like a $100 bill. And to a 5-year-old kid, oh my gosh, that was just like, wow, it just blew my mind as to like, oh my gosh, this almighty American dollar, because like $1 is $2.70 in our Eastern Caribbean currency. So it was huge. That was $270 that I could use to spend on anything or save, and I just remember just that joy and that happiness that I had every Christmas when he would come and give us a little Christmas allowance. And that kind of really, what kind of gravitated me to, wanting to pursue accounting. And, like you said in the introduction, I did just that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I worked in public accounting for about 10 years, like you said, and just got really burnt out. I really lost in that time all of my cultural heritage, my connection to food, my connection to people, community. I honestly, my accent was gone. My grandmother used to make all of these like teas and different herb blends and these different things that I just really lost connection to. And once I started being really burnt out from, the constant busy season after busy season, working lots of hours, changing dynamic in my household. My wife was really the one primarily taking care of my daughter. My daughter was born in 2020, and just through the pandemic overall, just I think everyone
Yeah.
really questioned
Yes.
their life just during that year, right?
Yes.
And so my daughter was born.
That's also a big life event to have happen during the pandemic. Wow.
Oh, yeah. She was born in February of 2020, and it just honestly changed my life because here I was, my whole life was surrounded about work and making money. And then I had this little one that I had to care for, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to sow into her? I can't just talk to her about money, and I wanted to teach her about my culture, but I realized I was so far removed from it. And then during the pandemic, I realized like, if the supply chain was to really go down, I had no clue about growing food. Like I didn't know where to start. I didn't know germination, all that stuff that I've learned way back in the day. And then I studied agriculture in high school that I just lost. There's none of that I kind of remembered. And so through that process of me, essentially losing myself, being burnt out, this change in dynamic at home, everything was leading to me coming to a point where, I needed to make a change. I wasn't sure what that change was going to be. I had all these questions. I wanted to grow food. I wanted to learn about like agriculture again, but I just really didn't know where to start. And in 2022, I actually started my first garden. We bought a home here in Colorado in 2021. One of my buddies, Scott, helped me break ground. And I just started tilling the ground, doing different things, and just really started experimenting. At that point, it was more hobby growing. But once my hands touched the ground and the soil and started working with the soil, I felt something inside of me change. It was like for the first time in such a long time, I felt connected and grounded in this new experience, this new paradigm shift, this new reality. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then it was just like mind blowing. And the season progressed. This was 2022. I had a very negative experience at work, and where my partner for the accounting firm that I was working for, she wanted me to work over the weekends, and I was trying to set boundaries. I've done a lot of therapy, done a lot of like work on myself, and I learned about boundaries through therapy. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start practicing this. That was something I've never done before. I've always been like the yes person at work, right? If they needed something done, I would just say yes. I would get it done over the weekend, whenever. And so that's how they knew me, right? So you could imagine when I started setting these boundaries, they're like, what? What do you mean no? What do you mean you're not going to work on the weekend? Like, no, like I need this Monday morning. It is now Friday at 4 o'clock. I'm handing you this information. I need you to get it to me by Monday morning. And it was like, no, I'm not doing that. And long story short, we had a meeting about that. She eventually, in that meeting, she said, I question whether you're dependable. And in that minute, just like that moment, my whole life just shattered because all of my life was surrounded about my career, making money, being successful at what I thought success was at the time. And it just shattered in front of me, like literally shattered. And I just remember being in that meeting, and all I could do in that moment was laugh. I was just like so shocked. And it was in that moment where I decided to take a step back from work. I took like a 3 to 4 month break And during that 3 to 4 month break from February to about May is when I really started working on my garden every day. I started building garden boxes, started learning about, soil health and what that really means, composting, the brown and the green material, like all of these different concepts that I really had no understanding of. And here I was applying it. I built actually three garden beds by myself. And, I've always been a keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
Never really been a handyman, like I've not really worked with tools and stuff, maybe done some small things here and there around the house, but it was like truly freeing to be able to take raw materials, pieces of wood, and some screws and some vision and be able to create these garden boxes. And I started to see the garden started to just like develop and blossom and turn into this like beautiful space that me, my wife, and my daughter was able to share. And it became such a focal point of our backyard during that summer. And I absolutely, once things actually started growing, I grew maybe, I would say 12 crops that year, just to get started, some kale, lettuce, snap peas, strawberries, tomatoes, a few different things. And zucchini, of course. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. Like I remember going over to my friend's house and I was a veggie guy, like I'll be the person to bring the food, bring the vegetables to the potlucks, to the hangouts and stuff. And everybody loved it. And I just remember the sense of, I don't know, just joy and accomplishment and just the happy feeling that I got being able to share that food that I grew with so much love and passion and be able to give that to my friends, that like I was like, I need to know if I could do this on a large scale. And I found a farm that was actually looking for a farmhand by the name of Frontline Farming. And it's a Black-owned farm here in Arvada, Colorado. And I started working there for, I would say, about 3 months. And I absolutely started killing it. Like I was like, I could do this. I mean, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty labor intensive. Let's just put that out there, right?
Yeah.
I don't want people to think, oh, no, it's a lot of work. Hot sun, the elements and everything. But just the passion and the joy that I had from the garden was able to be translated to that. And there's something about just being with yourself and being with the plants, being with the soil, noticing nature around you as you're working and weeding or seeding or transplanting, all of these different things that you do in a farm setting that just really grounds you mentally. And it was really a period of healing for me. Honestly, coming from corporate America, losing myself, losing my culture, losing my heritage, and then being able to find that again through my farming experience, because it really made me feel, I was a recovering perfectionist, essentially. I was trying to be so perfect in this corporate America world, trying to work 125, my utilization was like 125%, and I was just like constantly working. And I thought like that was my end goal, that was it. And then I realized, through this whole farming experience, because you have to slow down, you have to notice nature around you, you have to observe everything around you. And it really helps me to kind of ground myself in this new paradigm that, hey, like all those things that I thought life really was about, the money, having nice fancy things, cars, blah, 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 really meant nothing. What was important was the community that I was building around the farm, all of the people that I was connecting with, the plants, the knowledge that I was gaining that I could actually pass down to my daughter, so that like in the future, if she knows how to grow food, right? Like I could help to mitigate or reduce the chances of food insecurity for her, because she would be able to grow her own food. And that's huge. I honestly think like if you know how to grow your food, like people can't really control you as much, right? And so really I just fell in love with growing food and being able to see that I can do it on a farm. I wanted to pursue farming. Well, long story short, I got like connected with a nonprofit organization who actually, by the name of Go Farm, and they actually had a farm incubator program.
Oh, okay,
And
great.
Yeah. So through that farm incubator program, I was able to then take my experience from gardening, my passion, my love for farming, the experience that I got from, working on that farm over the summertime of 2022, and then apply that through the program, the incubator program that they had, and was really able to kind of kickstart my vision and my goal of Mount Liamuiga Farm in 2023. And we could talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
that too as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
There's a lot of talk these days about the value of certification. With the growing distrust of labels and customers who are more savvy than ever, farmers need better options to showcase their commitment to truly sustainable growing practices. Certified Naturally Grown is a peer review certification focused on the highest ideals of the organic movement. They keep costs low and paperwork to a minimum, so you can keep focused on farming. CNG's peer-to-peer approach encourages knowledge exchange and strengthens regional networks. See why farmers throughout North America are choosing Certified Naturally Grown and apply today at naturallygrown.org. Every fall on our farm, we order a couple sling bags of Fort V potting soil from Vermont Compost. Over the years, we've tried a lot of the compost and potting soil options out there, from making our own to buying off the shelf. And we keep coming back to Vermont Compost, both for overall quality and batch-to-batch consistency. It's that consistency that keeps us coming back. There are so many variables that affect how good your seedlings are. We know Vermont Compost will give our plants the best possible foundation, so we can stick to worrying about all the other stuff and not the potting soil. Visit vermontcompost.com/GFM for more details.
And now back to the show. So this is all actually pretty fast how this happened then in terms of
super fast.
Yeah, like getting bit by the gardening bug and working on it. And what was the scale of the farm that you worked on that summer?
Yeah, so I think the main farm that I worked on was an acre.
Okay.
But they actually had 3 different farms, one in Arvada and then 2 in Denver. So altogether, I think it was roughly about 3 acres for their farm overall.
Okay. So you got a good taste of it.
Yeah, so I got a good taste of it. Yeah, lots of experience.
I mean, maybe that's the thing when you already have a whole career behind you is you're like, I have no time to waste. Let's just do this.
Right.
You know?
Just do this. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like you said, the garden bug, right? Like once it gets you, it bites you and it just spreads, and it's like a good infection, like it just like spreads all over. And I just wanted to be with the plants. There was a point where in my life where I was like, plants over people, because I just wanted to be surrounded by like just all of the nature, all of the plants, learn all of these different things, relearn them essentially. And yeah, it was just a beautiful experience.
This sounds like a bumper sticker, plants over people.
Oh, people, right? I need to come up with that for real.
Yeah, I don't know how people would interpret that.
I know, right?
So then your farming experience was through this incubator program. You want to share some of those nitty-gritty details? Like how did you connect with this group? How did they connect you with land? How did you come up with startup funds? How much did they help you, or how much was it just about access to land? How did that all?
Awesome.
This is the mystery that I know is like out there for the people who want to farm. Like how do you go from point A to point B? There's so many details.
Right. So I would say point A is developing that passion. And if you have that, most people have that passion and that drive, and they want to know, exactly how can I execute and make this passion, turn this passion into a reality. And Go Farm, which is the nonprofit base here in Golden, Colorado, essentially created a program that allowed you or an individual to be able to do that. So I was actually able to connect with one of my buddies that I worked on the farm with at Frontline Farming by the name of Moses. And he actually connected me with Go Farm. He found out about the program. And once I found out about it, I absolutely just, went straight ahead and applied. So essentially, I'll tell you a little bit more about the program. So it is a 20-week program, and essentially they give you different curriculum over that 20 weeks. So it starts in around It started in October of 2022, and it ran through all the way through March of 2023. And during those weeks, there would be different topics that they would cover that are related to farming or farming adjacent. So starting with topics of, well, what's your mission, vision, and values of your farm? Because I think that is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, when they think about their farms and they have the passion, they have the vision, but like, what are your true goals and mission for your farm? And I think that's really important. So that was like one of the first classes that we actually had within this Go Farm program. There are other several classes that I'll talk a little bit about too as well, but that was like one of the main classes that really kind of set the stage for me as I kind of thought about what will my farm look like. So Go Farm also offers some different programs. So they also connect you with landowners too as well. So they will be able to meet with like different landowners and landowners who want to be able to kind of donate or provide their land access to Go Farm so that they can connect with incubator farmers, that they do all of that facilitating on their end. So that way you as the farmer, you don't have to go out and try to seek land. Because as you know, Katie, land access is probably one of the most pivotal or hardest like things to kind of come about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was huge for me because I needed land. I have my garden space, but for the vision that I was developing, it wouldn't have been enough for me to actually grow the amount of food that I wanted to grow. So the curriculum, going back to Go Farm offers the curriculum, the land access, and they also provide mentor support. So they have maybe, I would say, 25 to 50 different mentors who are experienced farmers ranging from first year to 10 plus years of experience, ranging from soil health, composting, just gardening, like farm planning, all of the different topics that you could actually reach out to. And they give you mentor hours. So incubators got 50 hours. And then there's also a second track where if you just wanted to take the actual class between October and March, you can do that too as well, if you're not ready to kind of take the leap of faith to actually start farming. So yeah, I did like the incubator track so that I could actually get connected with the landowners and see what options there were for land access. But, there's also that other option too as well. So those are like one of the three main pillars that really kind of set the stage for me as an incubator to be able to really be able to pull off a 1/4-acre farm with 1 year of experience. Had it not been for the curriculum that was structured so nicely, and I could talk a little bit about some of the topics that we covered, had it not been for that, the connection with the land access, and then also the mentors that I was able to kind of leverage throughout this whole season, I honestly don't think I would have been able to pull this off. So yeah, I'll stop there and we could talk a little bit more about, any specific areas you wanted me to touch on.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing program. It sounds like it allows you to do in 1 year what it might take even maybe 5 years just to do the hands-on learning, the research, the putting out the queries for land. They really compress it, which is great.
Yeah, which was really huge.
I am curious, just briefly, what kind of, was the coursework also sort of hands-on growing material too? Or, yeah, I imagine at least some pieces were like, got this, like the bookkeeping and accounting part for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So some of the topics that really kind of stood out for me that I really had no knowledge about or a very entry level knowledge about was talking about soil health. I knew the importance of the soil, but I really didn't understand, just how important it is. Because if you don't have good soil health, then your plants won't really grow and thrive as you would expect them to, right? And one of the classes in the Go Farm curriculum was around soil health. And through that, we learned about compost and different soil amendments. And I was also able to leverage one of my mentors who was able to work with me to take a soil sample on the land that I was working on and be able to send that off, get back results. And then looking at that soil sample results, I was able to do an analysis to be able to make amendments to that soil. So that was one of like the huge aspects for me of this curriculum that they provided. I'm just trying to think of like other areas that we kind of touched on. Production planning. Production planning was huge. There's so much to think about, Katie. Like I honestly don't even know where to start. You know what? Going into this class, I thought, okay, I'm gonna just get some seeds and put them in the ground and water it, and then that's it, right? Like it'll just grow and everything will be good.
Yeah, just do it once, right?
Just do it once.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people put in their gardens. But
right, exactly. But there's this thing called succession planting. And, I didn't know about that. So I'm guessing beginner, farmers probably won't really know about that too.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking in a farm scale, you want to be able to success plant, things like root crops or radishes, turnips, carrots, lettuce. These are things that you want to success plant so that you have like a constant flow of those crops coming out of your farm every, 30 to 60 days or so, sometimes even faster than that. And that was huge for me because honestly, it's a hard concept to kind of grasp because farming is all about timing, right? Like you have to get the timing down. And once you've lost that time, you can't gain it back, right?
Not till next year.
And not till next year. And here in Colorado, zone 5, BA, or
you have a short growing season.
Very short growing season. So you really need to maximize the amount of time that you have. So that was very huge for me, understanding production planning, success planting, companion planting too as well, which is another key factor that I learned a lot about through this curriculum. Being able to maximize the amount of growing space that you have, planting different crops with each other so that there's different beneficial properties that you can get from each, whether it's like pest mitigation, so growing calendulas and different herbs and stuff around some of your brassicas to help to reduce pest pressure that you would get. Yeah, so that was honestly like truly huge for me. One thing I did note is that Go Farm also provides a small stipend as an incubator too as well. So you do actually have to pay into the course, and it's on a sliding scale. So depending on wherever you are at currently with your finances and so forth, you can apply for a scholarship so that it can help to reduce the cost of the program to you. But then as an incubator at the end of the program, once you graduate in March of the following year, you're then able to get a little bit of a stipend that can then help to offset some of the initial cost of, say, starting, buying your drip tape and your irrigation supplies, seeds and so forth, which was also truly helpful too as well.
Yeah, there's so many things to buy when starting a farm.
I know. It's ridiculous. Like the list just kept going on and on. Just when, so when I started my budget, and I'm an accountant, so I was like, man, I'm good on budgets. I got this. And I think I underestimated just how much I would need and just the different things that I would need by probably like $7,000.
Oh, wow.
By $7,000. And that's not because my budgeting skills were bad. It was just because you just don't know what you just don't know. And through this experience, Go Farm gives you, like, one of the classes was on budgeting and sourcing of items and supplies. And we were able to learn, okay, well, what are some of the things that we need? So you have your trays, you have your seeds, of course. What about your starting mix? You need to have the correct starting mix. I'm an all organic farmer, so making sure I have like all organic starting mix, wire rack shelves. So as you can see here in this video, like I had to get wire rack shelves with lights and stuff, like all of these different things that I just really didn't even know. I had no clue about, but I needed to get them. And I just, like I said, $7,000 underestimated. And just to give an example of just how much money I think I spent in terms of expenses for my first year, it was probably around $15,000 for a 1/4 acre farm. And I would say that I could have probably been a little bit more efficient, maybe closer to like $12,000 range. But there's things you're going to make mistakes on. You're going to have to rebuy certain things. And so $15,000. So just wanted to let everyone know it does cost a lot of money, even just for a 1/4 acre to be able to kind of get a 1/4 acre farm started.
Yeah, no, yeah, the list is amazing. That's one of my visceral memories of our first year farming is I feel like we ran to the store almost every day.
Yes, yes. Constant trips to like, yeah, the supply store.
It was like, oh, we need some more soil mix, or we need this repair part for the T-tape. And we didn't even have a shop of tools, right? So like to just have like, oh, we need a screwdriver or whatever, it's amazing.
So that actually brings me to a good point. So another thing that Go Farm actually provides is they have a tool rental library.
Oh, wonderful. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yes, which is so huge. So when I was actually breaking ground on my plot, I was able to access that tool library, and Go Farm actually has a BCS tractor. So it's one of those walk behind tractors for, all of the listeners. And it really helps you to kind of till the ground and kind of get the land ready to be able to be worked. And that was huge because those things are like $5,000, $3,000.
If you're buying it used, yeah, maybe.
Even if, yeah, exactly, used even, I couldn't have afforded that. My first year, I just really couldn't have afforded that. So it was huge to be able to have that access to that library. And they have like a lot of different tools too as well that I've been able to access, broad forks, different things that really helped to kind of mitigate some of the costs in farming. So one thing I would say is search around your local areas. There's always usually a place that has some type of tool rental library. So even if you're not based here in Colorado and you can't access Go Farm, there's probably something that you could use to kind of leverage some of their tools and so forth.
Definitely. That's a really good point. Right. So for our listeners, that 15,000 that Keshaun was talking about doesn't include like a tiller. So that's really important to remember. That's like the basic trays, seeds, potting mix, etc., T-tape. Right. But it's true. I mean, here in our area, I don't know of a specific tool library, but we have a really great farm and lawn oriented equipment rental, which we definitely have made use of. And yeah, you can rent even the bigger tillers, or even they have tractors. It can cost up to $1,000 to rent a tractor for a week. But if you get all your primary tillage done in that time, and then you didn't have to buy a tractor, that can be a really great option for a first or second year farmer. Okay, let's talk about the land. So they connected you with land. Had it been farmed before you? What was the condition you found it in? And what was it like starting out and being like, this is my land?
Woo. Yeah, let's do it. So when was it? It was around October, November of 2022 where I actually got the chance to meet the landowner. She had a beautiful 2-acre property in Golden that was just pristine. It was beautiful. Her dad actually was a farmer, so he grew ryegrass and wheatgrass and actually had some cattle on the land too as well. So when you talk about organic matter in the soil, it was just amazing. But her dad only farmed just a small section of it. It was like 80 by 30 feet. So that was his little garden section. And then about a bigger section of that was then used for grazing cattle and then horses too as well. So really a lot of it was kind of untouched. So when I got there, I mean, I saw it and it was just absolutely beautiful. The contours of the land, there's like a slight contour, a slight hill from about, I don't even know, maybe like a slight 20 feet contour going down from south to north, actually. And it was just beautiful. And so in my planning for a 1/4 of an acre farm, I utilized the first section, the garden plot that her dad actually used to farm on, which was actually really nice. I didn't really have to do too much prep work for that area. But the bottom section where it hadn't been farmed before, where cattle and so forth was grazing, I actually had to go in and do some tilling. So that's why I was able to rent that BCS machine to be able to do that first initial clearing and tilling of the ground to kind of get some of that material kind of cleared and get the soil kind of loosened up and broken up, just so I could be able to then go back and broad fork and, kind of set out the area. So one of the first things that I had to do, really just look at the contour of the land and kind of visualize, use the space to be as efficient as possible. And I was able to do that and created like a beautiful 1/4 acre farm using the contours of the land. And yeah, was able to then go ahead and mark all of the beds out, mark all of the pathways out. And yeah, it turned out to be just beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. And okay, so what were your initial goals for this season, both in terms of your growing goals and your marketing goals?
Right. So honestly, like one of my first goals was really just to not go broke,
Yeah,
not
it's
like
like a
go into
goal.
net. Yeah, not going to red, not going to negative. I wanted to at least break even. And I was able to accomplish that. And really that was because I took the route of going the CSA route, which I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk a little bit about revenue. But yeah, that was like one of my number one goals, just not going in the red. My wife, shout out to her. She's a phenomenal, amazing woman. And she essentially during this time allowed me to be able to pursue my passion project of, creating this farm while she kind of held down the house financially. And then I was able to tap into, savings and so forth from my, public accounting, career time. So it was really huge. So yeah, just want to say shout out to her. But yeah, that was like one of my number one goals. Another goal was really to start a CSA. I really wasn't sure exactly how many CSA members, which CSA for all of the listeners out there, it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So that's essentially patrons who would buy into your farm at the beginning of the season, and then they would then get food distribution boxes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis throughout the rest of the season. And I actually was able to get 26 customers for my first year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, it was nerve-wracking, like I was nervous every day from April until the food started coming out of the farm at the end of June. I was just like a nervous wreck because essentially you're taking a loan in advance from these people, from your supporters, and you want to be able to show up and you want to be able to feed them and provide like a good quality product, right? And so yeah, that was one of my number one goals. A second goal that I had was to create community. So my farm, the tagline for my farm is food, community, and culture. So food, we talked a little bit about. I was able to feed 26 families through my CSA. Then I wanted to focus on community. So I wanted to be able to build community. So whether that is through voluntary events, farm tours, just holding different events and sharing the experience of growing food. People love this stuff. People want to be connected with where is their food coming from? And I was able to share that with like 100+ different people who just like passerbys who would just be able to come to the farm and were interested and wanted to learn more, different farm tours that I had. And, that was like one of my second or third goal. Fourth goal is just sharing education, right? And through those farm tours and so forth, I was able to share education, all of the things, different things that I learned through my Go Farm course or just, from my experience in general about my culture, about my heritage. I was able to share with others who would, tour the farm. And it was truly amazing to be able to do that.
Yeah. How did you incorporate sharing your culture through the farm? What did that look like on your farm?
So, like I said, I'm from the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, we have something called hibiscus roselle, or we call it in the Caribbean sorrel, which is a flower. And I was so happy. It's a tropical plant, so it's really hard to grow here in, zone 5A, 5B. And I was like so ecstatic to be able to pull that off. So I created a Caribbean or West African foodways where essentially I grew hibiscus. And then I also grew Scotch bonnet peppers, which is another pepper that is native to the Caribbean. It's called Scotch bonnet. And I just absolutely was so thrilled that, these are some of the things I remember cutting up Scotch bonnet peppers for my mom, or harvesting the calyxes of this around the seed pod of the hibiscus hibiscus so that we could make a drink called sorrel every Christmas. And I was able to share that with people, and people were amazed that I was able to get hibiscus to grow here in Colorado. They were just like mind blown. And honestly, I'm mind blown too. And, hibiscus turned out to be one of my most successful crops this year because people just absolutely loved it. It was an experience too as well. It turns your tea so like a vibrant red color, and all of the antioxidants and so forth that you get, it's high in vitamin C. And I was just able to share that with people. And I just remember being a kid and harvesting those like calyxes, around the seed pod. And like then here I am at farmers markets and so forth, sharing that experience with people. So like it was a part of my culture being passed down or passed, to or shared with like the community, which I just absolutely loved.
And in such a different growing climate. And
exactly.
Here you are in Colorado. That's amazing. And what is the pepper like? Is it a hot pepper? Is it a spicy one?
Oh yeah, it's a soup. Yeah, so I think it's a rating of 100 to 350,000 on the Scoville units.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really hot, but it's different from it's similar to a habanero, but it's more citrusy and very fruity. So it keeps you coming back for more.
You're like, it hurts, but I can't stop.
Yeah, exactly. I have a video on my Instagram of me eating my first pepper that I harvested from the farm this year. And it's like, it took me back because like, I'm used to eating some small little jalapenos and different things. But when I bit into that Scotch spotted pepper, it just immediately took me back. It was so fiery, but it was so good, so delicious.
And where did you source the seeds or the stock for these plants that wouldn't be in the typical market garden?
Sure. So for the hibiscus, I actually found a grower in Oregon.
Oh, that's where I am.
Yeah. Oh, for real? Oh, dope. I forgot the name of it. I'll see if I could find it here in a little bit.
You can always email me later. I am curious.
Yeah. So I was able to source the seeds from them. So their climate is a little bit different from here in Colorado, and I knew that, and I took that into consideration. I was hoping that maybe at least it would be a little bit more acclimated, since it's not just coming straight from the Caribbean or something. So, and I think maybe that's why this specific hibiscus was able to do well, because wherever they're growing it in Oregon probably had some type of similar cooler climates to what you kind of experience here in Colorado. So yeah, I was able to source the seeds from them. And yeah, thank you so much to them because it honestly just made my whole growing season. And then the Scotch bonnet seeds, I was able to just source them from, I think it was Baker Seeds or something like that. Yeah, they just had them.
You just knew to look for it.
Yeah, and I even tried some on Amazon just because like I just needed non-GMO Scotch bonnet seeds. This year though, I'm actually going back to the Caribbean in December, and I'm going to source some seeds from some farmers in St. Kitts.
Oh, cool.
And be able to, hopefully I can bring them back. I don't know. We'll see if TSA allows me to, but I'm hoping, yeah, I know. You got to get over that little hurdle, but
yeah, I've heard mixed reports on people being able to slip some seeds in their pockets.
Yeah, exactly. So wish me luck, fingers crossed. But, because then there's more of a cultural tie to that. And the seeds that I got were hit or miss. I started out with about, 50 starts, or my goal was 50. But I think I only ended up with like 12 plants. So the germination rate was very, very low. So I want to be able to source seeds from a more trusted site. And this year, I actually saved a whole bunch of seeds from the Scotch bonnets that I grew. So I'm hoping next year that I'll be able to have a much higher yield going forward too.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to grow that would have cultural significance for you that you didn't have a chance to try this year?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of root crops that I want to be able to grow. There's a leafy green called callaloo that we use to make, it's almost like collard greens essentially, but it's similar to collard greens, but I don't know if I'll be able to grow it here. So I'm hoping to source some seeds to be able to do that too as well. There's root crops such as yam, dasheen, cassava that They grow a lot in the Caribbean that I really don't think I'll be able to. So I think I'm going to start with sweet potatoes, just to the sweet potato slits and stuff, and see if I can develop a skill set around that. And then maybe in the future, see if I could bridge the gap and try to experiment with growing some yams and dashings and different things if I could get my hands on them. But that would be huge. Another thing that I was really happy to grow was okra. Okra, oh man, I grew so many okra, and one of my plants got to be around 5 to 6 feet tall.
What?
I know.
In Colorado?
In Colorado, I know.
We have a hard time even growing that in Oregon. So
I know, I think it's just the love and the passion, the excitement of me like planting. I honestly feel like plants respond to energy, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I think like all of the energy that I was pouring, the excitement, I was really pouring that into the plants as I cultivated them. And they really responded back to me and was able to like provide a beautiful bounty of food. And the okras, once they started coming, they just kept coming. And that was like also, sharing that as part of my culture too as well, because I would take it to market, my farmer's market, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, okra, what is this? Some people be, what is this? And I'll be able to teach them. Or some people who haven't seen okra because they shop at just normal grocery stores, which you won't really see that unless you go to a cultural grocery store. They were like, oh my gosh. And people started coming back and telling me about the gumbos they made and the vegetable jambalayas, and it was just exciting to be able to share that with my customers and my supporters. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what a wonderful experience to get to introduce something very different to Colorado palates.
It's such a great feeling, honestly.
So you had the CSA, but it sounds like you also went to a farmer's market as well. What were sort of the revenue sources you lined up for this first year?
So I actually had four revenue sources. So first one is the community supported agriculture. So the CSA model. Essentially, I had 26 customers. I did my CSA over 18 weeks, starting around June 15th or so, and ran all the way through October 27th or 23rd. And I actually had to push back my CSA by 2 weeks just because I had some challenges, which we could also talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
too
next.
As well. Yeah, for sure. So, and my CSA supporters, like customers, they were like so supportive and they understood. But yeah, and then so my second model was the farmers market. And let me just kind of circle back around CSA. So if you're a beginning farmer and you're really looking to see what are some models, I really, some people kind of stay away from the CSA just because it could be a pretty daunting task, just mentally knowing that you're getting a loan in advance and that you have to then deliver. But honestly, for me, it was like it was a make or break, because honestly, I did not want to go into debt starting this farm, and being able to get that upfront advance to be able to then help me float some of the initial expenses of the farm was huge. So really reconsider it, come up with a good budget, figure out, just how much your expenses are, and then kind of translate that to what your CSA offering will be, and really give it if you're a seasoned grower, gardener, and you know that you have some experience growing some food, really give it a second thought. My second revenue source was farmers markets. So I went to my local farmers market here in Arvada, Colorado, and it started around June 2nd or so and ran all the way through October 1st. And I mean, it was a phenomenal experience. I didn't really know about market culture. So vendors at markets, there's a thing called trades. So at the end of the market, like if you don't know about like this, like I absolutely loved it, like you'd be able to trade your goods, kind of like a bartering system. So my daughter loves mochi, so we'd be able to barter and trade some veggies for some mochi. Or I had some vendors who are like bakers, and I would get all these baked goods and different treats and stuff, burritos, and it was just phenomenal. And that was a really good revenue source because, once you get that money in advance from the CSA, that's it. You're going to be working over the summertime and you won't be getting any additional funds. So really having that weekly source of income coming in for the farm was huge. It was hard sometimes. Some weeks it could be hit or miss, right? But I at least, set an average goal, and I was able to meet that average goal, I would say, for 90% of the season, the farmers market season. So yeah, it really made it a good season for me to be able to have that additional income coming in from a week to week basis. My third option was, once the food started coming, it just started coming, right? Midsummer, July, August timeframe, I was just overrun with food. And then, I would feed my CSA customers, and then I would go to the market, and then I would still have more food. So I was like, well, how can I get this food to other customers, other supporters, other people who weren't able to buy into my CSA? So then I created a online pre-order website using Square. So every week I would actually list my items that I would have from the farm, anything that I was harvesting that week, any extras or excess above and beyond what I sold through or distributed through my CSA or sold at market. And I was able to then list those items on my Square website. Customers would be able to, between Monday and Friday, pre-order what items they wanted, and then Saturday mornings I would then have them come and pick up those food items on Saturday morning between 10 to 12. So that way I know exactly what I'm harvesting, and I know for sure I'm already generating revenue from me spending that time harvesting, versus when you go to market, you could harvest everything and you don't know if you're going to move it, right? So that was actually, and I really love that model. But you need to have a good following first. And if it wasn't for my CSA and customers telling other customers, and then also my farmers market where I was able to engage with different customers and get my word out there, spread my business cards, a lot of people wouldn't have known about my pre-order site. So you have to kind of like have a mix, different models, and kind of play with that mix to be able to like find that right key source. And then the fourth revenue stream was Go Farm. Also, they do wholesale purchases of your produce as well. So I completely forgot to mention that around the Go Farm program. So not only do they set you up with the curriculum, the mentor hours, tool rentals, equipment, they also have a wholesale purchase program where on a weekly basis for about, I think it was 19 or 20 weeks, they actually buy produce from you at a wholesale price, and a pretty decent wholesale price too as well. And they, for the incubator farmers, they at least buy one big bunch of a specific crop that you offer. They may not buy everything, but that was huge for me. So any excess that I had after going to market, my CSA, and then also, my pre-orders online, anything that's left over from that week, I would then make a purchase order for Go Farm, and then they would take, at least 50% of it. So that was honestly huge.
Yeah, that's an awesome part of that program too.
Yeah. So those four models really helped me to kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say be successful, but it really helped me to move a lot of the produce and generate revenue, and really helped me to meet my goal of breaking even and then some for this first year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always think if a farm can pay itself back the first year, that's a pretty big success. And you have already purchased so many pieces of the farm now that you'll be able to use in subsequent years, not to mention the building of your customer base and your experience level and your investment in the soil. Those all grow with you too. Okay, those are all great things, but I'm sure there were some big challenges. Yes? What? Some of which you may have anticipated, and some of which may have completely surprised you. What? I mean, we could probably do a whole episode just about the challenges. We don't need to overwhelm people, but in summary, kind of what sort of stuff came that surprised you, didn't surprise you, threw you off? How did you get through it?
Right. So I would start off by saying first, as a beginning farmer, you always have to do a risk assessment, right? Understanding, what are some of my potential risks, and then like kind of documenting what you would do in the event of that happening. And I did that. That was actually one of the courses that we did through Go Farm, and that was phenomenal. And had I not had that base document or base decision matrix, when these other challenges that I'm about to talk about, I would have it would have been non-starter. But yeah, I started the beginning of my season actually in a car accident.
Oh, that is not good.
No one thinks about that. that's like quite possibly the last thing, if at all, that's on your mind. And yeah, it happened to me. It was like April 4th or so. It was still snowing here in Colorado. I had just bought like a used 2000 Ford Ranger, and it was a truck for my farm. It was my farm truck, and I was so excited. But it was first time, driving a truck in snow. And I kid you not, I was actually headed to pick up a used wheelbarrow for the farm that I saw on Facebook Marketplace. And yeah, like when I left home, it wasn't so bad. The conditions weren't so bad. So I was like, okay, cool. But then as I got closer to the area where it was closer to the mountains, and the snow just started coming down very heavy. I didn't have weights in the back of the truck bed. I wasn't in 4x4 mode. I was probably going 30 to 40 miles per hour. So not even fast at all, but just the windy conditions and everything. Actually, my truck just hydroplaned, started sliding. I hit the bank or the edge of the road, ended up flipping over in the truck.
Oh.
I know. It was so scary. I flipped over in the truck. Luckily, the first time I landed in a barbed wire fence, and that essentially caught the momentum of the truck. And yeah, needless to say, the truck was totaled. I was okay, but Katie, let me tell you, the experience of being in a car upside down, out of control, I was like, what is happening? I was like, hopefully this isn't
like some message
of, do not start this farm, right?
Oh.
And yeah, so yeah, that's how my season start. So I'm saying that story just to say, be prepared for anything to happen. You just don't know. And farming, it's such, labor intensive career that, like, had I been seriously injured in that accident, that would have been like game over for me. My season would have been like a non-starter for sure. But after a few chiropractic appointments, a lot of rest and relaxation within those next couple of weeks, I was able to kind of bounce back. And yeah, the universe like held me in that car and protected me. Like I had tools, like I had a circular saw in the car, in the truck, just like floating in the air as I'm like watching it. And all that happened, like I got like a little scratch here from some broken glass that had one of my mirrors and stuff that broke, like, or windows that broke. And so yeah, so that was how my season started. I mean, that was bad, but that wasn't even really the worst of it.
No. Okay.
Yeah, so in Colorado, there's this thing called water rights, and I'm sure there's, in every other state.
Yes, we have this in Oregon too. Not every state.
Not every state, but yeah, most. Yeah, so I didn't fully understand, water rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a second to just breathe. And,
I'm going to breathe with you, Keshaun.
Yeah, because
I'm hearing you.
It is so complex. I think they make it so that farmers just, it's tough. But in this specific property that I had, and I guess I was misinformed about the water rights that would be on this property, first off. So I thought I would be getting water on April 1st. Turned out that I didn't actually start getting water until like May 4th or May 7th. So a whole month of my season was pushed back because I didn't have water. During that time, I was freaking out. I needed to get things in the ground by, my plan started really around April 15th, but here I was with no water. So I took a leap of faith. I started planting my onions. And you know what I had to do? I had to haul water from my house in 2 30-gallon tubs and take watering cans and actually take those watering cans to the back of my small little Hyundai Tucson, which had water all over. My wife was so mad at me because the car smelled like a wet dog. And I had to do that for the first 2 to 3 weeks of my growing season because, like I said, I had taken on a loan in advance through my CSA customers and I had to deliver. And onions were one of the first things that I wanted to plant. And I had some other things too, but the amount of water that I could actually transport from my house in those 30-gallon tubs in my small little Hyundai Tucson. It could only really be enough to water that one, onion bed. So that's all I did for about 2 weeks. I did that and collard greens, actually, about 40 feet of collard greens and 80 feet of onions. I was able to, just with watering cans, 2 30-gallon tubs of water, and just, making it work. Like, honestly, I was in a survival mode at that point, but there's really nothing that I can do because the water that was in the canal, it started running around April 12th. And I thought, oh, wow, there's water literally right here that I can see, but I couldn't use that water because there was a golf course that had a separate contract that had that water and I couldn't touch it.
Oh.
And I was beyond mad.
I am feeling you, Keshaun. Water in the West. And I feel like I need to interject for our listeners who don't live in the West. In the West, it's all about water. We can't rely on it coming from the sky. I will say in Oregon, in the spring, we more or less can rely on it. But it's basically dry our whole growing season in the West. So if you don't have irrigation, you're out of luck. That's the end. Oh.
Yeah, it was devastating.
And is that going to be different for you next year, or are you just going to plan with that in mind as you plan your marketing?
We'll get to that.
Okay, yeah. We'll put that in the last part I want to talk about for next year. But okay, so water challenge. Yeah. Any other big challenges, or how did that resolve itself?
Yeah, so, you always have to have a backup plan, right? And so I built in a contingency that I would have portable water, which unfortunately this specific property didn't have a municipal line installed, but we thought that we could install one.
Okay.
And once we did further due diligence to find out, well, how much would that cost? This specific area of Golden is pretty affluent, and we found out that it cost around $22,000 for us to be able to install a municipal line. Can you imagine? $22,000. So I had to just wait until I was granted access to literally take water that I could see, touch. It was literally there. But you could be fined, you could be XYZ, all these different things. So I had to wait until May 7th. So that happened. Then the irrigation system that was on the land to pump water out of the ditch canal, it just wasn't working. It just wouldn't work. It was like this pressurized system. It was built for just that small specific garden zone. And because I extended the farm onto like the northern side of the plot, and I needed to connect that to the current system, it just couldn't handle it because I had so many zones now. Went from one 80 by 30 zone to an additional 125 by 55, 3 different zones in there to get up to the full quarter of an acre. So that it was around 6,000 feet for the bottom zone. And I had 43 beds. Each bed had about 2 drip tapes. The space in between the drip tapes was 6 inches. So if you do the math, that was just a lot of water. And for some reason, the current pump that we had just wasn't capable of holding pressure and keeping pressurized so that it could then pump the water out down the field into the different zones. So I was dealing with that for about a month until I just finally had enough. I went back to the drawing board. I started looking, doing a lot of researching, and I bought a sump pump, 3/4 house.
Like a trash pump is what we would call it?
Yeah.
We have irrigated with that too, Keshaun. Is it like one of those little Honda motors?
Yeah, so this was like a 3/4 horsepower sump pump. And I was able to then put that in a filter bucket. I took like a 5-gallon bucket, put some holes in it so any big major debris would just keep out, put the sump pump in it, put that into the canal, the ditch irrigation, and be able to then connect that to my polytubing down all the way to the farm and be able to irrigate. So I went from only being able to irrigate 1 to maybe 2 beds at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was on the farm for like 4 to 6 hours, switching different drip tapes for all of the beds as I planted things in them just to water. Can you imagine just watering alone? And sometimes I would be planting, I would hyper focus, and I would forget that I need to switch off, switch from one bed to the next. So then I would have to stay there for another 45 to 30 minutes because I just forgot that.
But when you got the sump pump, the trash pump, whatever, were you able to run a lot more?
I was able to irrigate the full 1/4 acre farm.
Oh, beautiful.
Without any problems, any issues. And it was just like, like just a magnificent moment because like I said, I was spending 4 to 6 hours just there because I had to physically be there to water. But now with the sump pump, I got a timer connected to it, and the sump pump had a tether. So if the water levels ever dropped, the tether would drop too as well, and it would shut off the sump pump so it won't break the pump.
Oh, good.
So like I could just set it and forget it. And that was honestly a game changer for my season. But yeah, during those few weeks, I think it was around a 6 to 8 week period where it was just issue after issue trying to work the sump pump. Water is key. Let me tell you all, water is key. If you don't have water, your season isn't going anywhere. And so here I was with no water and literally in tears at the end of every day. And yeah, I was able to persevere with the support that I had from my community through Go Farm. And it's unfortunate that it kind of happened that way, but we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Are there any other big challenges we should talk about, or should we go to planning for next year?
Pest pressure. So pests, could be bunny rabbits. This specific area had a lot of deer and elk too as well. So luckily the landowner was able to support the initiative by putting up a 8-foot tall fence to keep out all of the deer. So that actually helped a lot. So thank you to them. And then also, but the bunny rabbits, oh man, I love bunnies, they're cute, but from a farming perspective, I hate them because they would just come in through the smallest, tiniest hole of the fence. We needed to make it much, much smaller. And that's oversight I'm planning on my side. So just make sure if you have a fence, you're building a fence in perimeter, make sure you get like the 1 inch by 1 inch, not 2 inch, but whatever the smallest spacing that you could get to make sure you could keep the bunny rabbits out. Because anytime I would transplant, my kale, kohlrabi, that kind of stuff, they would immediately go for it and chew the whole plant, and I would have to pull those up and restart planting. Now, one challenge, so those are things that I could say I kind of had some control, kind of, sort of, or kind of anticipate, but let's talk about weather. So here in Colorado this year, we had so many different rainstorms and hailstorms. I remember on May 25th, it was just finishing transplanting a whole bunch of crops. And then on May 25th, around 2 o'clock, a hailstorm came through and just decimated all of my transplants. Like literally, my hibiscus was shredded. But luckily, after pruning off a lot of the dead leaves and leaving some of them so they could, do their thing and get, photosynthesis going on and heal themselves, they were able to bounce back. But that was truly devastating because here I was struggling with the water pump, dealing with that, trying to deal with the pest issues of bunny rabbits eating all of my transplants. But then Mother Nature then comes through and was like, oh, you think we're done? Just let me throw on this curveball and I got you, It was devastating to say the least. But yeah, I would say those were probably some of my biggest challenges this year, honestly. And yeah, it's just farming.
Yep.
And I want people to understand the realities of farming. It's hard. There's a lot of things that are out of your control and you have to be okay with that. I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, but I'm a perfectionist. And through this whole experience, honestly, I do not care about perfection anymore because honestly, through this whole experience, I've just had to let things be. It is what it is. And honestly, that's one of the silver lining or moments from this whole farming experience. I'm no longer a perfectionist, and in a good way, because I take the good with the bad. I try to find the positive within any situation that I'm dealing with on the farm. And, things just kind of roll off your back, any issues and problems that kind of come about. So.
Whew. I have to say, I opened this whole episode saying that, the details from my first year are foggy. Well, a lot of them are coming back listening to you, Keshaun.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, all those. We had so many issues with irrigation for years. But I will say, if you stick with it, eventually you do work through a lot of that stuff. So that's where things do get different over the years. It's not like you can not have the hailstorm, but at least some of those basics over seasons, you work through it. It's okay. So next year, are you going to farm again?
So next year, I'm going to farm, but I'm doing a completely different model. A lot of reasons for that. This season was really hard. I'm not going to lie. This season was very hard. All of the challenges that I kind of just talked about, just the experience, it was really hard. The amount of labor and effort that went into building that 1/4 acre, it took a lot of time. It stressed my family a bit. So here I went from working in public accounting, corporate America, saying, I don't want to work 80 hours a week. And I gave that up to then, work 90 plus hours on the farm every week, being on the farm every day. And I would say it stressed my family a little bit. And so just because of that, and there's some other things too as well. So the property also doesn't have portable water. So, like I said, no municipal line. So I actually had to borrow or use my neighbor's water. So I actually run like a hose from our farm over across the road to the neighbor. And they were a part of my CSA. So I was able to feed them and they were able to support me in that, which was huge for my first season because I'd already done so much work.
So this is water for like your wash station for vegetables. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you need clean municipal water for that, not out of the ditch. Okay, got it.
Right. Yeah. You can't use ditch water. Food safety regulations or standards dictate that you can't use ditch water because it could, contain E. coli and, different, all that kind of stuff.
Just
right?
like we wouldn't want to drink it.
Exactly. You won't want to use it to wash produce that you're going to be using to feed people. So because of those reasons, and then, just the challenge of like misalignment of visions and stuff, and just the challenge of leasing someone else's land, that could be also a specific challenge that you have to really develop a really good relationship with the landowner and make sure that they're fully on board with your vision for the land, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not your land and whatever they say goes. And it may not necessarily align with your vision. I was trying to, create like a community-based experience on the farm. And I would say that necessarily wasn't the vision per se of the landowner and so forth. And, a lot of my creative freedom was a little bit restricted. So I think with the portable water, though, like that's like the main reason. And then just the other things too as well, which I'm pretty sure could have been worked out over time. But I think at this current time, challenges with my family and all of that and the portable water, it just made sense for me to go much smaller. So for next year, I plan to farm in my backyard, so I'm going to expand and pretty much utilize all of the space and leave like a decent section for my dog and my daughter to be able to play. But I want to be able to create more of like a community garden space where I'm actually doing more workshops and sharing about like growing food with customers. And then I hope to be able to grow a decent amount of food to still be able to go to a farmer's market. I probably won't do the CSA model, but I'll probably do a farmer's market and online sales so that people could actually come to my house, pick up different vegetables. People really want hibiscus and different tea blends. I'm actually going to be releasing some tea blends coming up here shortly. So if you're into that, check out my Instagram. Katie will be able to post that information. But yeah, changing the model. And you know what? It's okay. I know I can grow on a 1/4 acre large scale, but right now, currently for my family and just our current dynamic, it wasn't feasible for me to be able to do that for year 2. And what I'm trying to do is grow smaller, get more efficient, develop more of my SOPs, my standard operating procedures, and kind of like gain more efficiencies in my growing practices so that when the time does come and I have an opportunity to get some, additional land access, then I'll be able to then scale in a way that feels true to my family and my current situation, and I can be able to have my true creative vision to be able to grow the amount of food and hold community events and really share and create a true community-based farming experience.
Yeah. So the land itself, you need to find the right fit for that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially find the right fit. So that's why I'm just going to utilize my space, because that way I could really, have my own creative direction. I'll be doing a small amount of flowers, so I could do cut flowers. I'll be doing my hibiscus, a lot more of that. So then I can then have workshops and different experiences around hibiscus, because you could use it to make different teas, cranberry sauce that you could use around Thanksgiving, and just like different things too as well. And then I'm also going to be connecting with different chefs. So I was able to develop a lot of chef relationships through this year. And I'm going to be connecting with a chef, and they'll be walking me through what are some crops that are like highly sought out, are in high demand for chefs. So I'll be having like a little chef's corner so that I could have chefs come over and pick different items that they would like to as well. So I have some really cool ideas, still kind of working through on, prepping my backyard space, but I'm actually really excited because now it's mine. It's like the backyard is mine, and the effort and the love and the amount of effort that I'll put into it, I'll be able to reap that for years to come. So
yeah, for sure. And you'll be building skills and knowledge that can expand again in the future.
Yep, gaining efficiencies and so forth, which is like so important, because honestly, for a quarter of an acre, I was just constantly moving, and I want to be able to kind of slow down, enjoy the experience, and learn and also teach. And I just wasn't able to do that as effectively as I hoped this first year. So going smaller for this second year would actually help me to be able to do that, in the way in which I kind of sought out to do.
Yeah, a quarter of an acre for one person is a lot of land.
It is. It is.
Especially without a tractor that you own, it's
right. Harvesting everything by myself, planting everything, every seed, every transplant. And I mean, that's not to say I had a huge community support, lots of volunteers and stuff, lots of free labor, but it was still a lot of work, even just for me. So I want people to understand, make sure you have the right labor support, come up with a good labor strategy that reflects the amount of growing space that you have in your first growing season.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think the point you make about the right fit between the farmer and the renting landowner is so important. I know we started on rented land, and we looked at many different possibilities that first year. And I think we had worked on a farm for 2 seasons, and so we had a pretty good idea of what all our needs were. But it was actually kind of difficult to communicate the scope of what we would be doing to the renter, because we really wanted them to understand how much activity would be involved. Like what you're saying, there would be people out there. Are they okay with that? We would need water to wash with. Is there water we can do that with? There's a lot of moving parts to a market farm.
Oh, yeah, there are.
And actually, at the end, the land we ended up renting that first year was a family who had a CSA farm on their land. So they got it.
Well, that's huge. That's huge, yeah.
Yeah, people are like, oh, sure, you want to have a farm? I have a big... And it's like, yeah, but I'm not going to come out once and plant seeds and then another day to harvest. I'll be out there like every day.
Every day.
Do you really want me in your backyard every day?
Right. I'm going to have people coming through. There's going to be cars parked on the road, so level setting with that. It was a little bit of a challenge. And I think that was like one of the decisions that I just decided, yeah, let me just focus on my plot of land and be able to kind of move forward in that way.
Yeah. So reflecting on this year, any best tips for a new farmer? I mean, you've thrown out lots of great ideas, but is there anything you haven't shared yet, or experiences or ideas that you just think, oh, somebody starting a farm needs to know this thing?
Yeah, I would say make sure you have the right support. Honestly, you could have the passion for farming, the knowledge for farming, all of these different things. But if you don't have the right support, that's like financial support, just community support, volunteer help, all of that, like emotional, mental support. I've been through therapy during this time to make sure like I have someone to just talk to when stuff just got rough. Make sure you have the right support. I can't say that enough. And it was because of that support I was able to then persevere and get through to the end of the season. So that would be one of my biggest tips. I think everything else I kind of dropped little hints here and there, but yeah, get the right support and you'll be golden.
Perfect. Yes. And if people want to connect with you more, what's the best place for them to find you on the web or social media?
So check out my Instagram and Facebook. It's Mount Liamuiga Farm. So that's MountLiamuiga Farm. So both on Facebook and Instagram, and also on my website, www.mountliamuigafarm.com. You can message me on there, sign up for my newsletter too as well. But yeah, just would love to connect with you. Send me a DM, send me a message, and yeah, let's connect.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope people find you. And I want to follow to learn more about this hibiscus. And if you remember the Oregon seed provider, let me know. I'm curious.
Will do.
So thank you so much, Keshaun. This was great. It was so fun to hear about your year and time travel a little bit and my own experience. And thanks for sharing your time with us. Growing for Market would love to give you a year's digital subscription to the magazine.
I would love that. Yes.
It's decades of back issues as well as our current issues. So hopefully that can help you plan for the next stages of your farming career. And thank you again, and congrats on making it through your first year.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you, Keshaun. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or review. It really helps others find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business operations and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can now try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine subscription for a month, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days and you'll never get billed. Even the most basic subscription gets you a year of the magazine, plus 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Digital subscriptions start at just $30 per year. So head on over to growingformarket.com and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers for farmers in Growing for Market magazine.